The television entertainment continues in 15 minutes, and among the star guests yet to make their choice are Pamela Stephenson, Michael Crawford, Joan Collins and Roger Moore. Well, that's after the news and sport now on BBC One at just after 2 minutes past 9.
Terry Waite, cautiously optimistic tonight about a deal to free the Beirut hostages. And President Reagan campaigning for his senators, he's keeping his fingers crossed. Ian Paisley tells loyalists in Glasgow we'll smash the Anglo-Irish agreement. The fox hunters and the hunt saboteurs do battle again. And Ireland's rugby players notch up a record score. Hopes are rising that some of the foreigners held hostage in Beirut may soon be released. The Archbishop of Canterbury's envoy, Terry Waite, hasn't been seen since he arrived in Cyprus last night after a surprise visit to Beirut. It's thought he may be involved in negotiations to free the hostages. Mr. Waite said earlier that he was cautiously optimistic. This report from our Middle East correspondent, Keith Graves.
Since he flew into Larnaca 24 hours ago, Mr. Waite has effectively vanished, but his mission continues. Overnight, he told his office in London that he was cautiously optimistic, but would be on the move for the next 48 hours. Hours that he said would be crucial to his efforts to free the 6 American hostages. Rumour has it that he's returned to Lebanon, probably by US military helicopter from the British base at Akrotiri. Speculation has it that a deal might be in the offing involving the release by the French of Arab terrorist George Abdullah held in Paris. That would mean freedom, presumably, for the 4 French hostages as well. But it is all rumour and speculation, and Mr. Waite has been close to success before, only to be thwarted at the last moment.
The efforts to free the hostages are being watched keenly in the United States, where the campaigning for next week's Congress elections is reaching a climax. Our Washington correspondent Martin Bell has been following President Reagan along the election trail. He reports on the effects of the hostage crisis on the campaign.
Out in farm country, Twin Falls, Idaho, Mr. Reagan's faithful supporters were waiting for him, half a world away from the manoeuvring over the hostages, and by the look of it, not even in the same century. Mr. Reagan was campaigning for another of his embattled Republican candidates. The holding of American hostages is not an issue that's damaging him as it did his immediate predecessor, and his personal popularity has never been higher. If the hostages were out, they'd really be celebrating. The Americans have refused to negotiate, but they know what's going on and are urging caution.
I hope it's true. We'll pray that it's true. We'll work to make it true. But I will not feel very comfortable until they're here in the United States.
And Mr. Reagan's only comment, leaving Idaho? He's now in California on the final stop of his final campaign swing. The release of the hostages, if it happens, would be an extraordinary political bonus for him. But he's always been a lucky politician, and it could provide the vital margin between victory and defeat.
In Argentina, police have increased security at buildings housing British companies or with a British connection. It follows a violent protest in Buenos Aires yesterday against Britain's announcement of a 200-mile fishing zone around the Falklands. The Argentine government has sent Britain a formal protest note about the new fisheries limit, claiming it could increase tension in the area. The Foreign Secretary, Sir Geoffrey Howe, who announced the new zone earlier this week, said it was needed to counter overfishing around the islands. The Reverend Ian Paisley has told a Loyalists' rally in Glasgow that the Anglo-Irish agreement would be smashed. More than 14,000 Loyalists had earlier marched through the city in a demonstration organised by the Orange Order in Scotland. It coincided with a football match involving Rangers and Celtic, but there were no reports of serious trouble.
There had been attempts to have today's rally banned. Many in Glasgow feared that it could inflame sectarian feelings in a city where religious differences have often resulted in violence. Tension was heightened by the fact that the rally was taking place just a few hours before a Rangers and Celtic football match, a traditional focus for sectarianism. 14,000 Orangemen, mostly from the west of Scotland, converged on Glasgow Green, where the Reverend Ian Paisley emphasised the historic links between Ulster and Scotland and asked their support to defeat the Anglo-Irish agreement.
Our ties go back to the dim and distant past. We are one people, not two people. We will smash this Anglo-Irish agreement and bury it without resurrection.
The police maintained a big presence in Glasgow, but a spokesman said later that the day had passed off without any major incident.
In Dublin, delegates to the annual conference of Sinn Féin, the political wing of the IRA, have been hearing why the party leadership wants to change its electoral strategy. The Sinn Féin president, Gerry Adams, wants to end the party's long-standing abstention from the Dáil, the Irish Parliament, and he's been appealing to traditional elements within the Republican movement not to break from the party over the issue.
Sinn Féin delegates were told early on that a decision to take seats in the Irish Parliament was the most important task facing them. Their northern leaders have worked for months preparing the ground for this policy change and believe they've convinced most Republicans to abandon what they've termed the political wilderness. Outside, special branch detectives sat noting names and faces. It's their annual stakeout when the political wing of the IRA gathers. But Rory O'Brody, a former Sinn Féin president, leads the dissenters who argue that true Republicans cannot recognise the Dublin government. Inside the hall, the delegates were beginning the foot-stomping and applause, first for a representative of the Spanish terrorist group ETA. Then a Sinn Féin girl released from prison after serving a 10-year sentence, and finally for the president, Gerry Adams, insisting his party would survive the abstentionist debate.
There is going to be no split in Sinn Féin on this issue or on any other issue. Some comrades may decide to leave us. Perhaps they have already decided to do so. Some may have decided already if the vote goes against them, they will publicly walk out tomorrow. This is a wrong course of action for anyone to take.
The debate tomorrow will be long and bitter, and if the Adams camp carries the day, there's almost bound to be a walkout by older, traditional Sinn Féiners.
A cloud of non-toxic chemical gas 10 miles long is drifting across West Germany after a fire at a Swiss factory storing agricultural chemicals. Firemen fought all night to control the blaze as explosions shook the plant and flames shot 200 feet into the air. As gas spread from the plant, a fireman was taken to hospital and 500,000 people were warned to stay indoors. Although the gas caused irritated eyes and sore throats, it wasn't dangerous. But chemicals from the plant drained into the Rhine and Basel was given an emergency water supply. And in Bulgaria, 17 people were killed in an industrial accident at the Devnya chemical plant 20 miles from the Black Sea port of Varna. A government commission's been set up to establish the cause of the accident. 2 bombs exploded in Paris early today, one at the National Immigration Office, the other outside an air charter company. No one was injured. The terrorist group Action Directe said they planted the bombs in protest at the deportation 2 weeks ago of 101 immigrants from Mali. Anti-nuclear protesters blocked 4 border crossings today linking Germany, Luxembourg and France. The protest by a group of 50 civic organisations from the 3 countries was aimed at a new French nuclear power station, Cattenom, due to open in 4 years' time. Police said no arrests were made and that traffic was diverted to other border crossings. Now with today's sports news, from Nottingham Forest keeping their league leadership to John McEnroe losing his temper. Here's Michael Pechart.
Gary Birtles scored the goal that gave Nottingham Forest a 3-2 victory over Sheffield Wednesday and keeps Forest on top of the Today League. But Arsenal are maintaining their challenge. Martin Hayes got his 6th goal in 6 games to help the Gunners beat Charlton 2-0. Kenny Dalglish's 500th match for Liverpool saw his side bounce back to top form. A hat-trick by Paul Walsh and 2 goals from Ian Rush helped Liverpool to a 6-2 win over Norwich. Everton play in a televised match of the day at West Ham tomorrow, and Luton beat Queen's Park Rangers by a Warren Neal own goal. Graham Roberts of Spurs and Laurie Sanchez of Wimbledon were sent off in a bad-tempered match at White Hart Lane, which Wimbledon won 2-1. And more bad news of Brian Robson. He pulled a hamstring in Manchester United's draw with Coventry and will miss England's match against Yugoslavia in 11 days' time. In Scotland, goals from Brian McClare and Ali McCoist meant that Celtic drew with Rangers. Dundee United beat St Mirren to go level on points with Celtic. And Hearts are no nearer catching the leaders after drawing 1-1 with Hibernian. Ireland's rugby union players set a world record for an international victory when they beat Romania by 60 points to 0 at Lansdowne Road. The Romanians have beaten France, Scotland and Wales in recent years, but they had no answer today as the Irish ran in 10 tries.
Coman so desperate to get through. Gibson up to Bradley. Crossan going for his hat-trick and going perhaps for a world record in international rugby for Ireland if they hold it at that score. It's 46-0. The crowd's thirst still not assuaged. Des Fitzgerald headed on by Mullen. McNeil, Dean through. Dean for the 50-point mark. He deserved it. The hand of Dumitrash in the way. Doja, Tufan, fullback Hodorka, Nastasi. It's Dean again. It's under the posts, and it's 10 tries by Ireland.
England's cricketers have made a fine recovery in their match against South Australia at Adelaide to take a first innings lead. After Broad, Athy and Gatting had gone cheaply, James Whittaker scored 108 on his first-class debut in Australia. Alan Lamb also scored a century, and a robust 70 from Ian Botham off 62 balls helped England to a close-of-play lead of 77 with 2 wickets and 2 days in hand. Adrian Morehouse helped to lift British swimming spirits at Darlington despite a heavy international defeat by the United States. He won the 100 metres breaststroke by a convincing margin.
He is about 2 metres ahead now. He is swimming brilliantly in the great tradition of British breaststrokers. Adrian Morehouse, the second place is going to be quite a battle, but Morehouse gets it. Who's going to get the second touch? And the second touch went to Rich Corehammer, with Nick Gunningham of Great Britain getting the 3rd place. But Rich Corehammer of the United States finishing 2nd. Adrian Morehouse, though, he is the winner.
Britain's Anne Hobbs lost in 3 sets to the American Bonnie Gajusek in the final session of the Whiteman Cup Tennis International. And Jo Jury lost both her matches, singles and doubles. This gave America a 7-0 victory, the first whitewash in this country for 32 years. John McEnroe dropped out of the Paris Open yesterday, losing a quarter-final and his temper. He was beaten 6-3, 7-6 by the relatively unknown Spaniard Sergio Casal. After the match, McEnroe turned on the British umpire Jeremy Shales.
I'm going to start looking for another job. If I have any power in this game, you're never working on a court again. You understand me? You're pathetic, you know that? You are the worst umpire that I've ever seen in my life. You're never going to work another match if I have any...
McEnroe was fined £2,000 and faces 3 weeks suspension.
The hunting community have resumed battle with the fox and with the hunt saboteurs. At today's Barclay Hunt meet in Gloucestershire, the first of the season, there were scuffles but no arrests.
Shouting comments like murderers and scum, about 100 members of the Hunt Saboteurs Association turned up at the Barclay Kennels to cause as much disruption as they could on the opening day of the fox hunting season. The saboteurs had been out since dawn, opening up dens filled in by huntsmen and laying false trails. The protesters, who claim a policy of non-violence, were in determined mood.
What we do is to take direct action. We don't like to sit around and wait for the day when hunting is banned, although we do campaign for that. Our aim is to stop hunts from killing now, and we use non-violent direct action methods to do that.
They don't understand the countryside. I think they're anti-people rather than pro-animals. And if fox hunting and other forms of hunting were abolished, there'd be a lot more cruelty, believe you me.
Today, the hunt won the first victory. While the saboteurs demonstrated in front of the kennels, the hounds were taken out the back way. And so the Barclay Hunt spent the opening day of the season playing as much a game of hide-and-seek with the saboteurs as were the foxes trying to with them.
And that's all the news and sport tonight. From Michael and me, good night.